guys, it's Holly again coming at you with data collection and progress monitoring. Let's jump into this, shall we? So our objectives with this professional development are to know the definitions of data and progress monitoring, to know why we need this, what data should we collect, what is going to be meaningful for us, especially from an RTI perspective, how do we analyze and interpret this data, and what do we do with it once we collect it. So if you're like me, when you first start dealing with the data, you might feel like this. Personally, my background's an English teacher, so sometimes I can get overwhelmed with data, but hopefully I'm going to show you different data points to really target, and that'll make it less overwhelming for you. So some quick definitions. What I really like about the definition of data is that it's used as a basis for reasoning, discussion, or calculation. I think we need to look at this as a jumping off point into serving our students when we talk with administrators, special education professionals, or even just classroom teachers. And I also like that it says it's a digital form. I find this to be the easiest way to collect data is to collect it digitally. Next, we have progress monitoring. Again, I think the most important thing to take from this definition is that it quantifies a rate of improvement or responsiveness. This is huge, especially when we're talking in RTI. We'll try different interventions for students based on their needs, and data is going to really help us decide, is this serving a student best? Is this the most helpful to them? Is it effective? So those are the definitions that I find really helpful. Why do we need data? It gives us an objective view of a student's needs through observation. Again, we're used to seeing students maybe subjectively, but this is going to help us, again, identify specific strengths and challenges with a student, hopefully skill specific. We're going to also target interventions that are specific to a student, so it aids in differentiation with a student. It gives us concrete information to those who surround a student. So again, when we're in a meeting or we're conferencing with a parent, we have concrete, solidified information. This is great too for celebrating student achievement. We can cheer on our students when they have growth, and we can cheer on each other throughout this process. This is a quote by Joel Mulliken. He writes for Edutopia, and when he was asked about data, he said, if everything is important, nothing is important. So I want to jump into what I find to be important, again, through an RTI perspective specifically. So here are some data points that we can view. I'm going to go over each of these in depth, but I did bold 4 data points that I find specifically useful for RTI. So let's jump into the first, which is iLearn. So on the left-hand side, I have a snippet from the IDOE website talking about iLearn and what it is and what it measures. So it is a computer adaptive assessment that measures proficiency for different disciplines, for different subjects. And their scores come out a couple different ways. The first way is a 4-digit scaled score. So this 4-digit score then gets turned into a proficiency level. And that can be a 1, a 2, a 3, or a 4. And we're going to look at that in the next slide. Okay. On the right-hand side of this slide, we have the 4 scaled proficiency score. So it's broken down in a couple of ways. We have the student's grade and the subject that they're being tested in. And then it tells you, based on where they fall with that 4-digit score, if they are proficient, at proficiency, above it, or not. And again, this test is going to help show us not only how the student scores on this assessment, but if they meet state proficiency standards, how their score compares to students in their school, in the corporation, and in the state. So it's really useful. So again, we have the 4-digit scaled score. So let's kind of look at the proficiency levels, because again, it's a 1 through 4 range, and I think that's a little more user-friendly to look at. So if a student scores a 1 for proficiency, they're below. So this means they have not met their grade level standards. They require significant support for knowledge, to develop knowledge, to apply this, and then, of course, analytical skills. This is going to be mostly, and again, what's going to be in the parentheses is somewhat of a generalization. Of course, there's always that student that can fall out of a generalization, but this is level 1, mostly special education, and tier 3 students in the RTI tier. Now, if they have a 2, They're at a level 2. They're approaching proficiency. They are almost at grade level standards. They demonstrate basic knowledge, but they have limited analytical skills or higher order thinking skills, and they do require support to be on track for college and career readiness standards. So again, a generalization, these are mostly going to be Tier 2 students and what we would call bubble general education students. So this means those students are within 20 points of passing in a related subject area. So maybe they were 20 points short of passing iLearn with math or English, etc. Then we go to a level 3. A student here is great. They're at proficiency. They have met their current grade level standards. They're on track again for college and career readiness. This is going to be mostly, again, generalizing here, students performing at grade level. And then level 4 is the highest that they can achieve. That's above proficiency on iLearn. They have mastered current grade level standards, and they can demonstrate more complex knowledge, application, and higher order thinking or analytical skills. Mostly, this is going to be high ability students or honor students. So this is taken as a screenshot from iLearn scores from students from this year. For privacy concerns, I blacked out the first and last names of these students, but these are from students who took the iLearn for English Language Arts grade 6. So this is kind of how we're going to look and decipher this. So we're going to look at the first blacked out student here on this first line. So they are actually at proficiency. If we went back a couple slides and we looked at their 4-digit score, it would fall in the at proficiency scale here. This is their scaled score, and if we go back to the chart, again, 2 slides back or so, this is that cut score. So this is the score that would be at proficiency, the lowest that they could score for at proficiency, and then this would be the highest for above proficiency. So again, if we go back, they are going to get a proficiency level score of 3, so that means they are on track, they're performing at grade level. And CCR indicator is college and career readiness. So again, I took this from the IDOE website. This indicates that they do meet those college and career readiness standards. So as you can see, not all students are the same. So this would give you a lot of information about your specific student. Study Island benchmark assessments. Most of us are pretty familiar with this. I did put how to access this data. When you're logged into Study Island, you click school reports, built test reports, you select your class and your test, and you can view the report that way when you click view report. This gives you a lot of information. It gives you the number of questions a student got correct, incorrect, and their percentage. These benchmark assessments are made to individual skills for both the disciplines of math and English. So this is going to tell you particular growth of each individual skill. So very helpful. Again, another digital tool on Study Island is NAWEA MapLink report. Again, up here is what you're going to click to access the data, and it gives you a lot of great information. The number of sessions spent on each standard, so you can see how many sessions it took a student to gain mastery of that standard, the time they spent on each session, so maybe they clicked through it, maybe they really took their time, the number of questions they received correct, percentage correct, and an overall grade. And this also tells you what grade level the student is working at per topic. So maybe with main idea, they're working at a 4th grade level, or maybe with math, they're working at an 8th or 9th grade level. So this is going to be really helpful again. NAWEA. So that's another standardized test. Again, it's a computer adaptive test. So each student's going to get on NAWEA a unique set of questions. And as they answer correctly, the questions get harder. So it's based on their responses. If they answer incorrectly, the questions get easier. So it's very adaptive. So it's going to measure, again, just like iLearn, how they're performing with specific skills and standards. NAWEA gives a student a RIT score. So that stands for Roche unit. It's a measure scaled to develop. It's basically a scale that NAWEA developed to simplify how to interpret this. Again, you can kind of read about it, but the scores are pretty easy to interpret once you know where your student should fall. Now let's look at core classroom grades and what we should look at with that. How are you going to access this data? Most of us are familiar with Skyward, and you have a Skyward account, so I'm not going to go too in depth with that. But this gives you data about academic performance in the class. It can also tell you student effort or interest in the class if they're not performing well. It can give you an idea of work completion, and Skyward also can indicate the RTI tier of the student. So Skyward is going to be a very useful tool in looking at different pieces of data there. Next, we have formative and summative RTI assessments. We've gone over this a little bit, but again, formative assessments, they access prior knowledge, they give real-time feedback, they're informal, they're quick. If you'd like some examples, there's a ton with this link. Feel free to click it and explore. Then lastly, we have summative assessments. These are more formal in nature. They measure student growth over a period of time. We're mainly in RTI going to look at our Study Island benchmark assessments, again, individual to each skill, to kind of get a more summative view of a student. There's a lot of other factors that we can look at with data as well. These are more social emotional, but again, very important to give kind of a whole view of a child. Their attendance, their tardiness or truancy. We can look at data from a discipline record. Are they getting into fights with their peers? Do they visit the nurse a lot, especially maybe during one class? What's their parent engagement like? Their peer interactions? Maybe you can talk to counselors about different problem behaviors. Again, using the different people that surround a student to get a more holistic view, that data is very helpful. So we collected all this data. Now, what the heck do we do with it? Well, from RTI, this is very, very useful in grouping students. This data also can be communicated to, again, parents, administration, classroom teachers. We can look at, okay, are current interventions leading to student growth? What are working best? And what skills for each student are strengths and weaknesses? This is going to help us target future instruction. Biggest takeaway, it targets future instruction. This is also going to tell us from an RTI perspective if a student needs to be moved out of a current tier. So if they're in tier 2, maybe they go to tier 1 and they get moved out of the program completely. It really just depends. This is going to be very useful, though, to target student need. Here's some additional resources that I provided here. So I know I gave a super basic overview of these main tests of NWEA and iLearn, but if you'd like to learn more, feel free to click this. There's also some tutorials for Study Island here. So thank you so much for viewing this presentation. I really appreciate it. As always, feel free to reach out with questions. Thank you so much.